This is Jay Norris with Brewer FX here in Chicago. Today's Friday, September 26th. Happy Friday to you. Before we get started, I do need to point out that trading Forex and futures is a risky endeavor and may not be suitable for every investor. Our charts here are snapshots of current market prices and may not be an indication of future market conditions. As usual, we start out with the Euro US dollar. The long-term screen on the left here, I've got a trend line on the weekly chart. That trend line here, that's telling me that despite the rally the last 2 weeks, that the short-term trend on our weekly continues to be lower. That's in conflict with the short-term trend on the daily right now. Eyes lower right here on the daily chart. Here we can see we had a pretty good rally. The market retraced a little shy of 50% of that big summer sell-off, the big August sell-off, and the short-term trend is still higher on the daily, in conflict with the short-term trend on the weekly, and that's what's making for such tough trade now. Upper right, this is the Euro US dollar 4-hour chart. You can see how the market's just been flagging out. I think the more it hangs around up here, probably the more it gives a chance for bulls to strengthen their position. So we'll have to see. It looks like it's going to continue to flag out here. It looks like it wants to go down and test this primary trend line on the secondary trend line on the 240-minute chart, the 4-hour chart. So we'll have to watch it. The Euro US dollar conflicting on the weekly and the daily, and that's making for tough trade. Situation in the pound. We see the weekly were higher on the week for the pound. Looks like you're almost into. Looks like you could almost say the short-term trend on the pound here is higher now. Your stochastic poking above 25 there. The pound dollar on the daily here, the lower right. You had a big change of direction candle on the daily on Thursday. Upper right here looked like you had a case for, you can call that a double top on the 240-minute, did the 240, and that trend line held so far. So I think if the longer the trend line holds, probably the stronger, the better that is for the bulls. But we'll have to watch it. The primary trend on the daily, primary trend certainly on the weekly are still lower. Next market, Australian dollar. We can see on the weekly chart here the Australian dollar closed lower for the week. Australian dollar continues to be the laggard here amongst the majors. Lower right, Australian dollar looks like it's flagging on the daily. Couldn't quite complete a 382 retracement again. You couldn't quite get over that Gann 3/8 line. But daily, it looks like it's flagging. Short-term trend higher on the daily. Secondary trend, primary trend still lower on the daily for the Aussie. 4-hour chart for the Aussie up here. This top formation still looks like a possible head and shoulders to me. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. If you're dollar bullish, I would say pick on the Aussie, given that it is the weakest against the majors on this overall counter trend rally we've seen the last couple of weeks. Dollar yen on the left here, the weekly chart, short-term trend on the weekly is lower. Well, you can see from that break on that trend line. The daily chart here, primary trend pretty much sideways over the last 4 months. We can say the primary sideways, secondary still lower. Short-term trend, we have to say higher. I have a pattern over the last week or 2 weeks or so of higher highs, so the short-term trend higher on dollar yen, the 4-hour, the 240-minute dollar yen upper right. You're getting into a symmetrical triangle here, so symmetrical triangles are, as technicians know, that's flip a coin. Gives you. I like following the yen. It's one where my mentor always asks me, he's like, why are you following the yen? It's such a low currency pair. I don't know. I'm enamored with the yen for some reason, and it's a good one to follow. But it's a major too. The next market, the CAD. Canadian, dollar Canadian, eyes left here for the weekly chart. You have two trend lines drawn here, one trend line off the wicks, one trend line off the bodies, and they're both converge right here. You've got a confluence of support right in here, a little bit lower where the market's at, right around 102, 101.75. We'll see how that pans out. Short-term trend on the weekly is lower. Secondary trend, secondary trend still up. Primary trend on the weekly is kind of skewed there. I'd have to say it's still lower over the past 2 years, and that you still have a pattern of lower highs. Canadian dollar on the or dollar CAD lower right here, the daily chart. You see it's sewed in support here at the old breakout point, but you didn't get a bounce. You did not get a bounce, and that tells me that the Canadian itself is probably stronger than we thought it would be, given that the primary trend here was dollar CAD was looking strong, but I think Canadians maybe worth getting long here, short the dollar, that is. But you go upper right, and this sideways movement here start to look more like a bear flag than anything than support. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as the dollar could weaken here further against the Canadian. Next market, the Swiss franc. Swissy on the right here, still higher. Short-term trend questionable. On the daily lower right, you got good support at the 382 retracement there. Short-term trends questionable. Upper right, not a lot of help here too. These, the dollar chief, much like the dollar CAD's showing some indecision. I would hold out hope for the longs though, just given that the primary, the secondary trend on the weekly is higher. So kind of guesswork there. Euro yen closed unchanged on the week here. We see on the weekly chart. Lower right, it's consolidating right around the 382 retracement here. That's starting to look like a bull flag to me. Upper right to 240, sideways. I think it's telling that you had this breakout, you made a lower low here, but it climbed right back into the range, so that probably supports longer term euro yen bulls, supports the carry trade. Pound yen, slightly easier on the week. It closed after that nice hammer low the week before. On the right here, lower right, like pound yen went and tested the old resistance. Resistance became support, and you had a pretty good rally off there. Short-term traders had a nice move this morning, taking advantage of that bounce off the old resistance. Upper right, 4-hour chart doesn't show up too well because it is a longer-term chart. But yeah, there was a pretty good rally in there this morning. Secondary trend on the 4-hour remains up, so that's supportive of markets. We had a friend of the firm requested I look at the euro pound. I think this is an interesting euro pound here, weekly weekly on the left. That looks like an interesting formation. You have that doji there, that pin doji, and a pretty good change. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But if it were to close below the support line, the mid-year support, you can see a trend reversal there. Daily doesn't help me out a lot, lower right, and 240, that looks pretty tangled up. But back to the weekly on that euro pound, that looks pretty interesting. That looks like it'd have a long way to come down there if we were to see a reversal there. It's hard not to try to project, try to make market calls here, but really that's not my goal here. My goal is to point out the obvious on this stuff and keep it simple. But sometimes I get away from that, and I'll start making projections and market calls. But primarily, I'm just here to point out the obvious to you. But thanks again for coming. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Monday. We do this every other day, and you can go to our blog on Brewer FX and see how we did in the past, and again, we hope to see you here again. See you next week. Thanks again.